Today, I'm in conversation with Dr. Alice Matimba, the head of training and global capacity at Wellcome Connecting Science. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. You're watching the UK series brought in partnership with the Nyaradzo Group. If you enjoy this episode, remember to subscribe, to like, and to share. Let's get down to some work. Greetings! Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor UK series brought to you by the Nyaradzo Group. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. If you enjoy this series, remember to subscribe, to like, and to share. Let's get down to some work. Dr. Alice Matimba, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor.
Thank you.
Your CV, I told you, just intimidated me. It floored me. The stuff that you've done, absolutely amazing. But let me start by asking you, what have been the most transformative seasons in your life?
So I'm from Zimbabwe. I was born in Zimbabwe, raised in Zimbabwe, went to school in Zimbabwe, and some of the transformative times have been in my, high school years when I decided that I was going to become a scientist. So I was interested in science. I was interested in, to understand, biology and so forth. And so when I had to look for a degree, for example, in sixth form, you're asked to get to decide on what you want to do. And I was actually interested in medicine, but I was also interested in other scientific areas, like chemistry and so forth. Unfortunately, I didn't get into medicine, but I did continue to work in science and biology that's related to health and medicine. The other transformative time is when I moved to Europe to do my postgraduate studies. That was really transformative. That was the first time I had been outside the continent. Obviously, I traveled around between in the surrounding countries in Zimbabwe, but that was the first time that I went to Europe, and that started actually my journey for over 10 years, where I was in pursuit of my career, lived in different countries, traveled to different places, and that really, really shaped my knowledge of the world as I see it today. I also had some moments when I was finished my PhD I moved to the United States. While I was there, I decided that I wanted to return to Zimbabwe, and that was really a transformative time because I felt I needed to be at home with other people and contribute to development, scientific development in the country. And so I did that. Over time, I decided that actually I'm not stuck in one place. I decided to come back to Europe, although I had decided at some point that I wasn't going to leave home, but I did. But I realized that I'm not stuck in one place. I consider myself a global citizen because I have lived in different countries. I have worked with so many people. And so over time, living in different places, experiencing different cultures, learning from some of the best people in the world has really shaped me into this person that does not feel that I am in Zimbabwe or in the UK, I feel like I am a global citizen. And so I guess that's why I am here today.
Talk to me about what it is like being a successful global citizen, talented, but with your home as it is, with your country where it comes from as it is, in terms of the area that you specialize in, medicine, science, biology, genomics. Where is your headspace when you think, I'm a global citizen, I've been able to do this, but this is what my country looks like?
So that's an interesting question. I would say I have a lot of people that contributed to my career as I was growing up. In fact, starting from my family, my father, I also had some really inspiring, what could you say, people that I worked with in my university years that really inspired me not only to go into science, and I'll come back to the fact that actually I'm not doing much research at the moment, but I also had people that it was almost like an opening to the world for me, because they had that experience to work with people. And in science, in fact, science is a global profession. And so for a lot of people that work in science, they get to travel, they get to work with people all over the world. And so to me, that was inspiring. And so when I was in that position during my final year of my undergraduate studies
at the University
of Zimbabwe, my supervisor for my project was very, made science sound really interesting because of the work that they were doing, which involved working with global scientists. So I saw that as an avenue that I was interested in following. And so the first opportunity for me to do something, in this case, it was to go and do a master's in Belgium. I jumped on it and I got into the program, and I've never looked back ever since. What does it feel like?
Yeah.
What is it like? Well, it's exciting. I can tell you that no day is the same for me. The work I do is very exciting. I've been, particularly in the role that I'm in now, I've been here for 7 years. Most of my work now is working with scientists. So I'm no longer really doing research. I used to do research. I used to also teach in the university. But I decided to take a role that allows me to impact scientists, and also to impact those scientists in a way that they can translate their knowledge and skills and science into healthcare, for example, and public health. So my work is really focusing on training scientists, training professionals, people that have graduated, that are looking for very short training in how to incorporate genomic sciences into their work. So our work has been really inspired by the genomics field, which I can explain if you would like.
Please explain it. What do you do? What do you do on an everyday basis, and what is genomics?
Yes, so I'll start with what is genomics. Yeah. And perhaps that also comes back to, that also is very much intertwined with how I ended up here. So almost 20 years ago, the human genome was sequenced. And this basically means, just to make it, simplify it, scientists all over the world, in fact, not just scientists, big organizations, governments, came together to decipher or to try and understand or read every single piece of information that is in our genome. Our genome is what is required to, which is what is translated, information that is translated to who we are and what we are, including everything to how we look, and also, how our, bodies respond to chemicals, and how and diseases, for example. So so at that point, which was 2001, the institute where I'm based, at the Wellcome Sanger Institute, it is where the human genome was sequenced, together with other institutions, but they played a leading role in deciphering the human genome. So I happened
the Wellcome Trust.
The Wellcome Sanger Institute.
Okay.
So coming back again to what I do, I work at Wellcome Connecting Science, which is a part of the Wellcome Sanger Institute. So Wellcome Sanger Institute is where the genome was sequenced. Wellcome Trust are the body that funds the work that we do. Largely comes from Wellcome. Wellcome, now called Wellcome. So Wellcome Trust, but it's now called Wellcome.
So just to give people a perspective, so the Wellcome Trust was founded in 1936 by Sir Henry Wellcome. It's got an endowment of £30 billion, and the trust spends $1 billion on this kind of work that
research
that you're doing. So on a day-to-day basis, what do you do? What's your work?
My work is to run the program. So like I mentioned, I train professionals, primarily research scientists that are interested in applying genomics into their science. Also healthcare professionals, or people that are working in the clinical field, but also in public health, so that they can incorporate genomics into their work. At this point in time, genomics is actually part and parcel what is needed to understand disease, to understand how people respond to medicines, but also to track diseases, for example, infectious diseases, as we need. That a disease like the COVID, for example, tracking what we call resistance to medicines, like antimicrobial resistance. So genomics has become part and parcel of healthcare and public health. So that means that a lot of people that have trained in medicine, in healthcare, and in other areas need to understand what is genomics, and then, of course, understand how this can be applied to their work. And so a lot of the people in the research and healthcare workforce are seeking to learn about genomics, how to translate it, how to incorporate, how to integrate it. So we have a lot of people that apply to our program to come and learn this. And so my job is to develop that program, deliver that not only for scientists in the UK, but also globally in Africa, Asia, Latin America. My other part of the job, of course, is to manage a team of developers that do that, and that working collaboratively with people that then organize these training events. And so it's so I have to manage those people as well.
What's the product? What comes out of what you do?
So we have people that are train the workforce. So people need. So as I've mentioned, the genomics has become one of the biggest transformative areas in human history, and so what people need are the skills to apply it in their work. For example, if they are researchers, they need to be able to understand, underlying mechanisms or biology of certain diseases that will then help them to develop interventions, to develop drugs and treatment and so forth.
And any concerns around, it was a great thing to have this Human Genome X project done. What about things like synthetic biology? the technology that is taking advantage of this knowledge, the threat that is coming, opportunity that is coming from AI,
Yeah.
the hacking the DNA to our DNA to do other things, essentially for us to play God with the DNA that we so much understand. This is an ignorant question from somebody who doesn't understand the science, but what's your response to that?
So my response is that, and I will not, I would like to just give a disclaimer that these are very contentious issues and discussions that I think a lot of people are also asking. So my take to that is that so genomics is really important, which is a technology that allows us to do a lot more stuff, understand a lot more stuff that we didn't before. Similarly with AI, it's also a technology that's enabling people to do a lot more stuff. And so with the growth of technology, the growth of fields that are enabling humanity to do so much more, I really think, we should embrace that. However, there are a lot of people that are out there who are also who are also concerned about, the impact this has in the world, in people's lives, and so forth. And so there are quite a lot of groups that are coming together to understand, for example, the ethics behind all these things, also the social implications on these technologies. I have done a little bit of work in terms of understanding ethical issues around the application of genomics. And in some of those, and we are still, I think, one of the areas that is still, quite key actually in these discussions, particularly in AI, was it in genomics, is about data. And so, because people are concerned about what are people going to do with the data when they have it? What are people going to do with
particularly
my genomic data?
The bad actors? What are they going to do with this stuff when they get hold of it? We can never preclude those kind of people, yeah.
So and that's why there's a massive investment in safeguarding people's data, and for people to follow, the right rules to make sure that if you're collecting any data, be it genomics or any data, that somebody consents to that. And as you know, even in Europe, even for you to have my phone number, I have to consent to that. So in the same way, in genomics, in research, and in healthcare, you have to make sure that people consent to whatever you do with their data, including when you take their samples and you sequence their genome. People have to consent to that, but that's not enough. There are many other regulatory frameworks that scientists, or even the society, and people that are also interested, like organization companies, have to follow to make sure that we're safeguarding people's data in the right way. So
Absolutely.
It's a big area that a lot of people are really grappling to terms with. And not only...
It's a new area, new technology.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the more now we have more data being generated, you now have people keeping this data in databases, for example. So the person who has consented to having their data used, say, for research or for whatever purposes, has consented to have, that data, which is all fair and good. But there are other areas that are coming up where people have to share that information across institutions, for example, or across nations. So where data has to be shared between, say, Zimbabwe and, say, countries in other countries. In genomics specifically, it is a big deal because of the inequities in science already, in the inequities in power, leadership, and so forth.
I'm going to stop you
So-
there. When we come back, I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting point to take a break. The inequities in power and resources.
Yes.
We're going to come back to that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to go to that specific area, the position of Africa vis-a-vis what we're talking about. And also, you've done peer-reviewed publications, 48 of them. I want to go and focus on one of those. So at home, don't go away. See you on the other side.
We have a lot of problems in the country. We have a lot of in Zimbabwe. For me, it was about how do I change my mindset so that I can continue to do what I want to do good.
Sending money from the UK to Zimbabwe? Look no further. Introducing Sawira Money, your gateway to seamless money transfers. You can collect at Sawira Money Transfer Agency offices at selected Nyaradzo branches. With Sawira, it's quick, easy, done.
You're watching the UK series brought to you in partnership with the Nyaradzo Group. I am talking to Dr. Alice Matimba, the head of training and global capacity at Wellcome Connecting Science. Dr. Matimba, you had hinted on an issue that I think is pretty heavy lifting, which is the inequalities that we face, which were so glaringly revealed during COVID. The lack of vaccines and PPE for on the African continent. As you sit there with the expertise that you have, what are your thoughts around building capacity on the African continent, on the issues that you are an expert on regarding education? How do we bring these issues to the education sector so that Africa does keep pace with the developments that are taking place in the world? At institutional level, how do we enable and empower institutions, universities and other institutions, research institutions to deal with this issue? And essentially also an enabling environment where genomics is mainstreamed through our societies. I mean, the Western world is doing fine. It's not so in Africa. Am I right? And what's the way of dealing with these issues?
Okay, so I'll start with the first question, which is how do we build capacity, or how do we? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, so I mean, I have, in fact, the work that I have been doing is almost like you know, in a way, a dream that I have had for a long time. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a little story about when I came back to Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
From my postdoctoral studies, which I was doing in the USA at the Mayo Clinic, which is one of the best sort of institutions in the world. So very, very nice.
Proud of you.
Yes,
We're
thank you.
proud of you.
When I came back to Zimbabwe, I was very much interested in building genomics, actually, building genomics and research, teaching it, and so forth in the University of Zimbabwe. And my main focus was actually on always been more interested in getting down to the real deal, like what are the mechanisms that are causing an individual to respond to this medicine versus that one? What are the mechanisms that are related to the differences in populations, say in Africa and other populations as well? So I had a run of that kind of work, looking at different populations, African populations, and what say genomic markers that influenced response to the different responses to drug therapy, drug treatments in disease treatments. Now, when I was at Mayo Clinic, I had an opportunity to go further and to understand what is the function, for example, of this gene. What is the function, and how does that then translate to to people that are undergoing therapy. I was interested in continuing this work in Zimbabwe, but you can understand that to have the resources was a challenge. To find people to work with was a challenge, let alone to get, I would say, mentorship was a challenge. So I couldn't get funding. And so I decided to change my mind, to actually change my mindset is the word. And I want this to be a recurring theme about shifting mindsets rather than, because we have a lot of problems in the country, we have a lot of, in Zimbabwe. For me, it was about how do I change my mindset so that I can continue to do what I want to do good.
What you enjoy doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
To do science or to help or to transform lives is what I wanted to do. And so I decided to take a different, to find out what are the gaps, what is needed right now. So whenever I talked about, I want to do genomics, I want to do this fantastic work of discovering new genes and all that stuff, I was told, well, do you know that people don't even have, drugs? They don't even have medicines. They don't even have, the care that they should be getting. So, and for me to do this wonderful work to understand why you don't respond to this medicine and why that one doesn't respond to medicine, basically to do genomics, I need to develop specific tools and resources to then build, the cohorts of people that I can that we can study, right?
Sure.
To understand that. So I decided that I was going to start from scratch. In other words, are there areas where we can start developing cohorts or people that are, that might be having certain diseases, and then when we develop that, we're able to bring them here, we're able to understand what their disease, sort of progressions are, and so forth. At that time, I was interested, I had been working in cancer, sort of like cancer therapeutics, but I was now interested in diabetes. Then at the time, because a lot of work that's been done, a lot of funding and investments had gone into infectious diseases like HIV, TB, and so forth. So I was interested in the non-infectious diseases like diabetes, which are very progressive diseases. And I was also still interested in cancer. So I decided that I was going to build my work in that area and still be able to do genomics. So I worked with the Zimbabwe Diabetes Association. And I also was in touch, at that time I was in touch with Dr. Guramatunu, the eye specialist, who had some...
he's been on the show. He's sat on that chair.
Yes, so he was one of the... In fact, there was actually part of we talked about the transformative moment. So I can't remember how this happened, but we were interested in diabetes and understanding how we can help people that are living with diabetes in Zimbabwe. So we came together with a team of, from the Zimbabwe Diabetic Association, and also we wanted to understand people with diabetes. They develop retinopathy, for example, or eye conditions. They also get diabetic foot, where they're, some of them have to get amputated and so forth. So I started to understand that because diabetes is a very progressive condition, you start to develop all these complications. There were no screening services for that. So people come to the hospital, like Parere Nyatwa Hospital, Harare Hospital, but they are not getting the right amount of routine screening for some of these conditions. So at the time, we worked with the Zimbabwe Diabetes Association to try and get even just a little bit of funding so that we could get people screened for diabetic foot. So, and that was successful. We got some funding from the International Diabetes Federation. At the same time, we wanted to work with Dr. Guramatunu around the eye conditions, eye complications. And so he had some partners that he's been working with from the United States, whom he's been working with for a very long time, and they've done quite a lot of projects in Zimbabwe. So we partnered up with them to also to another funding body, which is the Rhodes, I think. No, it's not the Rhodes. It's the Byte Trust, sorry.
Okay.
And they gave us a small fund to purchase a camera. Again, technology, right? So we could get a mobile camera, handheld camera that could allow us to take pictures of the eyes and then translate that into a diagnosis and so forth. And that is in areas called tele-ophthalmology. So allowing us to use a handheld camera, send the images to somebody who translates that and then gives a diagnosis.
Tell me, I mean, you are a woman who's been very successful in a male-dominated discipline. And there's a lot of girl children that are watching right now and saying, there she is, she's been successful. Well, what guidance would you give to those young people with the kind of big dreams that you have? What kind of message would you have for them?
Be patient with yourself, but don't give up. Find people that can help you through your journey. And those people can be people in your family. They could be people in your school. They could be people that, that you come across. Learn about what they do. It may not necessarily have to be science, but spend your time, as much time, engaging with people that, that influence you and inspire you. If you can't find people, if you are a reader, read books or materials that allow you to continue to feel inspired.
Who's been your inspiration? Who's been your role model? I mean, you've succeeded quite a lot. What explains your success? Who've been your role models?
So a lot of people, a lot of people. So I'll start with my family. So in my family, obviously my father has played a big role. He was very tough dad, and he was, we had to do well in school.
Is he late now?
He is still alive, and so we always talked about life. We had to sit around the table for dinner every day. So you're not allowed to sort of do your own thing where you pick your plate and you go somewhere else. And so he had, we just had the culture of talking about anything and everything, but particularly learning. And a lot of our conversations were learning about the world, learning about people, learning about what he was doing in his career.
What was he doing?
So he worked in private companies in mining industry, and over time became director or CEO for a whole bunch of different companies, including mining, and also eventually became a consultant. Mm-hmm. And a lot of so we learned a lot from the work that he was doing. And he was also a very, what could I say, go-getter. So, and every time he was doing whatever he did, he would tell us those stories. This is what I did today. This are the challenges I had, and this is how I handled it.
Any other role model apart from that?
So I would say I have a couple of people that I interact with, more like peers, right? So not necessarily mentors and so forth. So people that have not necessarily just inspired me, but people that have carried me through my journey in my, I guess, adult career.
We all need that, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've been very close with a colleague of mine whom I saw recently, actually in Cape Town.
What's their name?
I'm not sure they want to be named.
Okay.
But they have been. We've worked together when I was. So I didn't tell you that when I was in this pursuit of science and career, I had quite a lot of challenges that's why I ended up moving around quite a lot. And so I've worked with them when I was in finishing up
What challenges did you experience?
Well, because I was doing my PhD, started doing my PhD in, it was a sandwich program in Belgium and also in Zimbabwe. Some of the challenges just came about, like a lot of people usually have challenges when they're doing their doctoral studies. And so I decided that I was going to, finish off my work in Cape Town. And at that time, the journey of doing doctoral studies and PhD is very grueling, is all I can say. And a lot of people will tell you, stories from here to wherever. And
I didn't complete my
you didn't complete
MPhil,
Okay.
DPhil. So I understand the pain and the difficulty. And I admire somebody who's been able to do it like you.
Yes.
And the problems I encountered was, school fees. I failed. I got a place at Calgary University. I couldn't raise school fees.
Oh, yes.
And that's part of life.
Yes.
So what challenges did you experience yourself?
It's just maybe aligning the work that you're doing, keeping your supervisors happy.
Submitting assignments on time.
Submitting assignments on time. Funding wasn't a problem for me because I had a grant that allowed me to do the work. In fact, it also allowed me to, you were talking about, girls out there that are, or even just, people out there, even in Zimbabwe or anywhere. When I finished my master's, in fact, even when I started doing my master's, but when I finished my master's, I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to do. And I wanted to do things that were transcending borders. And that's always been my dream, to do big things. And so I'm going
to stop you there. And then when we come back, I really want for people to understand the stuff that you've done. The PhD work that you've done and that journey, which for me inspires me quite a lot. And I want that inspiration for us to spread it throughout the world. So at home, don't go away so that you don't miss out on that part of the story. See you on the other side.
Be deliberate about finding people that can influence you and inspire you.
Sending money from the UK to Zimbabwe? Look no further. Introducing Sawira Money, your gateway to seamless money transfers. You can collect at Sawira Money Transfer Agency offices at selected Nyaradzo branches. With Sawira, it's quick, easy, done.
You're watching the UK series brought to you in partnership with the Nyaradzo Group. And I'm talking to Dr. Alice Matimba, who is the head of training and global capacity at Wellcome Connecting Science. So, Doctor, you've been very deliberate. You've got a Bachelor of Science from the University of Zimbabwe, a Master of Science, Molecular Biology, which is an inter-university program, which is fascinating. Belgium, University of Antwerp, University of Brussels, University of Leuven in Belgium, and then your PhD in human genetics from the University of Cape Town. This has been a deliberate thing. You set out to do this stuff. You were indicating as we were closing that it wasn't smooth sailing.
No.
But it was deliberate. In a nutshell, talk to me about how deliberate you were with what you were doing.
So I was very fortunate actually that I could decide what I wanted to do for my PhD, which is not always the case. I also had at the time met the one of my supervisors actually for my PhD, and they were setting up an institute in Zimbabwe at the time, and they were actually going to be doing genomics, and I was really fascinated by that. So I deliberately wanted to do genomics. I set out to look for people that were doing that. I applied for funding. Obviously,
where did the interest come from? I mean, genomics is a rare kind of thing. I think I started reading about genomics 2-3 years ago. Where did you get the interest from?
So I was so I finished my master's. I done my master's in molecular biology, and in molecular biology we did have some content actually around genomics, and that's also around the time that the human genome was being sequenced. So I think a lot of people were talking about that. So that to me already just fascinated
Drew your attention.
me. Yes.
Yeah.
And to find somebody or people that were also looking into that, and particularly at the time understanding because the human genome was supposed to be a magic bullet. But my supervisor from Zimbabwe had actually seen that actually it cannot just be a magic bullet, because populations are going to be different.
Yeah.
People from different backgrounds are going to have different genomes. In other words, we need to study the populations, and then we need to study the individuals. So for me, it felt like that's the right train to get on, and I jumped on it.
But Zimbabwe wasn't the right place to do that.
At the time, I managed to start it in Zimbabwe because I got my fellowship was actually between Zimbabwe. It was a sandwich program.
Okay.
So Zimbabwe was actually the best place to be for me, or for anyone that would have wanted to do something different, something new, something progressive, because, like you said, everything is already quite well set up in
the
Europe.
West, yeah.
There's very little. There was very little, if nothing, maybe happening in Zimbabwe and maybe many African countries. So we needed to work with the people in Africa. And so we set up a project where we worked with scientists from 5 African countries to collect samples and information that would allow us to then study the different African populations. I don't think you would have been able to do that anywhere.
Absolutely. So, and then your employment history. You one of your key first jobs was senior lecturer.
Yes.
And research scientist at the University of Zimbabwe, 2012 to 2017. And then you got into the Wellcome Trust, as it were. For you, what have been the highlights as far as your career is concerned? What have been the highlights, the key learnings from your career so far?
I would say, like I mentioned earlier, be deliberate about finding people that can influence you and inspire you. And you can find these people anywhere. Yeah. So don't close your eyes and say, well, I don't like these guys, and so I'm not going to talk to them. Secondly, I would say it would take a lot of time to reflect on what you're doing and what you want to do. Because when you do find people, when you do find the opportunities, you're ready. So always be ready with what you want to do, so that when those opportunities came along. This job that I'm in was actually an opportunistic job, because at the time there were no jobs like that, because my job is literally to spend all my time developing all these training programs and so forth. So, and also then impact at world scale. So this was, to me, stuff like this did not, because I was already interested in this capacity development, capacity building, and giving skills to people. When this job came along, I just saw myself totally in it. Another thing to do is, like I said, know what you want to do, and talk to the right people and make them your friends. And sometimes they come along, you work with them, and maybe new people come along. So be opportunistic and just always be ready.
Be open for opportunities. Yeah. So we're in the UK doing this series. And talking to Zimbabweans in the diaspora. What has been, for you, what's the best side of being in the diaspora, and what's the worst side of being in the diaspora?
Oh, can't really say the best, because there are many best things. But one of the good things is that for me, that I have found, is that there are a lot of opportunities for career opportunities here. You mentioned earlier that there are a lot of things, obviously, that are not working well in Zimbabwe, and here you are able to, to find those opportunities, come in, blend in, and and get on. And that it's quite diverse. So the area I work, where I work, you've got people coming from all over the world. And that to me is really, really, really good. So it's something that I know when you're in Zimbabwe, you're very just mostly around Zimbabwean, which is also great in its own way. But when you're here, you're among people from all over the world.
And what's one thing that you dislike about being in the diaspora?
I know it's a cliche, but it's not just being in the diaspora, it's particularly being, in the UK where it just rains a lot.
So it's the weather.
So the weather is really, really
apart from the
challenging.
weather, anything else that makes you want to go home?
Yeah, of course, missing the life at home, missing the family environment, the culture, and just being able to, meet up with your siblings, for example, or meet up with other members of the family and having a good time and having a braai.
Yeah. Is there anything that would pull you to go to Zimbabwe and say, yes, I'm a global citizen, but I want to go and make a difference in Zimbabwe? Is there anything that would make you do that? Pack your bags and go back home?
Yes, of course.
What would that be?
If I would be able to continue having that global impact, even if I would be in Zimbabwe, I would definitely, yeah.
What 3 books would you recommend to our viewers and why, in as briefly as possible? What 3 books would you recommend?
So many years ago, in fact, when I started on this sort of international journey, I read a book entitled The State of Africa by Martin Meredith.
I've read the book. It's a beautiful book.
Yes. And when I read it until now, I say it's a must read for any African. It also transformed the way I see the world and also the history of the world, the history of African nations. And I highly recommend that to anyone that wants to understand what really happened in Africa.
Absolutely. Second book?
Second book is a book that I read. This one was also maybe following on from this book and understanding the world. This was primarily focused on the Congo. It's called, it's by, I've forgotten, sorry. It is...
Is it on Lumumba?
No, I don't know. I had it in my mind. It's just I've forgotten. Sorry, I'm probably just a little bit nervous. Yeah. By Rothschild, I think. What's his name?
Yes. It's King Leopold.
King Leopold's Ghost.
Yes.
So that to me, because I had lived in Belgium for some time.
It's a sad book.
And I had obviously a lot of, seen how it is and understood. I'd been there, gone to a lot of museums and learned a little bit about Belgian history. But by reading that book, it gave me a very different perspective. So it's very sad and very dark. And I didn't finish it because it just, every time I read it, it just sent me into some kind of, depression about it. But it was also very influential in understanding the history, the dark history of Africa.
It explains why the Congo is where it is right now, because of the role that Belgium played in that country. Your third book?
So I would say, I've read a lot of books, but currently I'm reading a book, or actually I'm not reading a book, I'm listening on Audible. A book called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a book that was recommended. I'm on a program, which is a program for, it's called Accelerated Talent Program. I don't really know what that means. But anyway, it's supposed to accelerate some of the, I think, talent that I have. But one of the sessions that we had, they recommended we listen to that. And this is a book that's brings to light, how we think and how we make decisions, how we make judgments and choices, and how we engage different parts of our brains in different ways. So thinking fast, where you sort of like the automatic way, which is system one,
slow.
and thinking slow, where
I've got it, but I've not been able to read it. But maybe I might rethink after talking to you.
Yes.
Dr. Alice Matimba, thank you so much for creating the time to join us. We're proud of people like you, global citizens. And as Zimbabweans back home, we look forward to the day when we benefit from this, big diaspora back home. We wish you all the best. Continue doing what you are doing.
Thank you.
Allow me now to turn over to our viewers who are all over the world to say thank you so much for your support. Remember, we are a weekly show. We are out on YouTube every Monday at 7 a.m. Central African time. And to ensure that you don't miss out on any of these quality conversations, remember to press on subscribe, like, and share. And then you'll get a notification every time we have one of these quality conversations. We also have gone a step further and created a website where all our content sits for your viewing and listening pleasure. We also love your comments below this video. Please share your views on the conversation that I've just had with Dr. Matimba right now. We love those comments. Until next time, cheers to you all.